Before we start, a short trigger warning is in order. This video will feature retelling of historical violence and rape against women. So if you feel sensitive about these topics, please use the timestamps below to avoid them. With that out of the way, here we go. There are a few bands out there that are just bound to end up here at some point. They deserve their video, because they combine pure dedication to history with powerful music. And XDO is certainly one of them. Their songs focus on a specific, but comparatively long period of time. A great empire that grew from Europe's Mowgli twins and would expand over the whole continent as well as parts of Asia and Africa. The ancient Roman civilization shaped life in the Mediterranean region for more than 1,200 years. The magnitude of this time span becomes clear if you think about the fact that it is longer than the time that passed since Leif Erikson set his feet on American ground until now. Or, if you want to think of it this way, if the Roman Empire would fall today, it would have been around even before the Anglo-Saxon states agreed to found the Kingdom of England. Now, that's what I call a superpower state. Of course, the Roman civilization had to undergo several changes in its territory, form of government and relevance in Europe, and XDO covers them from the mythical founding of Rome by Romulus until the late stages of the empire, always accompanied by slow, quote-driven, sometimes symphonic death metal. The newest album, The 13 Years of Nero, came out about a year ago and features exciting new tracks, among them a collab with the brutal voice of Brittany Slays from Unleash the Archers, called Boudicca, Queen of the Iceni. You wanna know what it's about? Well, stay tuned. As is already included in the very album's title, one of the important personalia in this video is Nero. Well, he's not actually doing much himself, but his action lay the foundations for what is about to happen. As the fifth Roman emperor, following in the footsteps of Julius Caesar's adopted son Augustus, and the infamous Caligula among others, he knew just what to do as head of an imperial state. Conquer more land to include into the Roman Empire. And as he had almost ran out of continental Europe to conquer, he turned his gaze toward the sea. The Romans had set their eyes on Britain since 55 BC, and a full-scale invasion was launched under Claudius in 43 AD. Maybe that's where the Britons got their urge to invade other countries? When Nero became the emperor 11 years later, a lot of the southwest of the islands was under Roman control already. Nero decided to push even further into the regions of what we know as Wales. And as the quote in the song's beginning tells us, he selected not just anyone to lead the charge. Seneca the Younger, advisor, Stoic philosopher, and statesman. Although Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, and not Seneca, was the governor and therefore decision-maker in Britain, Seneca fully deserves to be tagged so prominently in the song, and not for any good reasons, but we get to that later. While the Roman troops advanced on the city of Lindum and massacred the Celtic Druids on the Welsh coast, things started to stir up in the southeast. King Prasutagus of the Iceni, a British tribe living in today's Norfolk, died in 60 or 61 AD. He had come to rule in 47 AD after an unsuccessful revolt by the Iceni, and went with a pretty pro-Roman attitude. His people made peace with the invaders, while keeping their freedom in their land, and Prasutagus' friendship with the Romans went so far that, in his testament, he even left half of his kingdom to Emperor Nero. This generous gift was probably given with the intention to keep the other half, which he gave his two daughters, free from Roman occupation. But as the accusations in the song's lyrics tell us, this did not work out at all. And XDO didn't just make that up. Famous Roman historian Tacitus, who is known to have had access to eyewitnesses of the events, writes about the breaking of the treaty by the Roman side. All of the Iceni kingdom was seized by the Roman military, people were deprived of their land, and the tribes were plundered. Although our source does not explicitly mention it, it is very likely that violence was involved within this process. So I guess you could say the eagle, representing Rome, bathed in blood and in sin for sure. This breach of contract can probably be attributed to Seneca, who personally profited from the Iceni's stolen riches, and made sure to use his influence to escalate the situation this far. When the dead king's wife, and I quote, woman of terrifying appearance by the name of Boudicca, rightfully protested against the Roman actions, the punishment was brutal. The widow queen of the Iceni was violently flogged, and her 2 daughters, the original heirs, were raped. This is mentioned in the first part of the song, before the breaking of the treaty, even though chronologically it actually happened afterwards. If I had to guess, I'd say Ex-Dio wanted to point out the severity of the crime against personal well-being over the non-compliance of a formalia, and I see their reasons. The heartless violence is also mentioned by Tactius, but our second important source, Dio, no, not Ronnie James sadly, but Cassius Dio, left it out completely. This shouldn't be given too much thought, however. The simple fact that Dio lived almost 100 years after these events puts things in perspective. To nobody's surprise, Boudicca got extremely pissed off. She joined forces with another Brittonic tribe, the Trinovantes, and raised an impressive army of 120,000 fighters. The willingness to fight the invaders was great among the Celtic population, which is probably understandable, considering the harsh rule the Romans had forced upon them. While the violence against Boudicca and her daughters were certainly the trigger for the uprising, the actual reason lay deep in the oppressive colonial regime. So, the warriors united behind Boudicca, who, as the song suggests, had at least some ties to the spiritual world of the ancient Celts. Before the battle, she is said to have ushered an invocation to Andraste, a British goddess of victory, with the exact quote that ends the song. It is very unlikely that Boudicca actually said these words, as she didn't speak Latin, and Tactius would not have understood her Brittonic, but apparently Andraste was benevolent nonetheless. With much of the Roman military force drawn into unrelated campaigns on the western island, the Celtic army made short work of 3 major cities, Camulodunum, Verulamium, and Londinium, which we now know as London. They did not proceed with any caution, as they slaughtered around 75,000 people with no intention to make prisoners, and without differentiating between warriors and civilians. This is as far as the song goes. Not to dampen your hopes, but Ex-Dio left out the end of the story for a reason. Boudicca's army had grown to an enormous force of 230,000 to 300,000 warriors. Yes, I know that's not very accurate, but this was almost 2,000 years ago. I'd be surprised if more than half of you remember what was for lunch yesterday, so give me a break. Despite being outnumbered by a great deal, British Governor Suetonius defeated the rebels with just around 10,000 men. This unlikely outcome was owed to 2 factors. First, the Romans had obviously had a movie night and watched 300, as they utilized the geographical conditions of the still unknown battle location in a way that Leonidas would have been proud of. By maneuvering into a valley, they created a choke point so the Iceni and the Trinovantes couldn't make much use of their numbers. Secondly, the Brittonic tribes had been disarmed as a precaution measure before the rebellion began, so the Romans were much better equipped. All in all, the rebels were obliterated. In their wrath, the Romans even slaughtered the children and transport animals that the tribes brought with them. Boudicca also found her death, either by sickness or self-administered poison, depending on who you want to believe. In the aftermath, The Boudiccan revolts almost led to Nero giving up Britain completely, rumors said. This way, however, what was left of the tribes was incorporated into one of the greatest and long-lasting empires the world has ever seen. I love the new XDO album, and this song in particular, because it shows how fragile of a construct history can be, where one person has the chance to flip on a turning point. Also, the raw power just helps me getting through a hard day. But there is one critical remark I have. When making a song about a warrior queen, and even having an awesome female singer supporting it, maybe think about letting her sing the parts that actually come from that woman's perspective, and not just the bridge and a quote, Hey there, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new today. If you have any questions, remarks, wishes for other bands and songs, or free beer, feel obliged to hit me up. If not, see you next time, and until then, stay true.